Hi, friends. Welcome to the Hey Fundraiser podcast. I'm your host, Mary Petersen, and whether you're a frontline fundraiser, an executive director, a board member, or someone just wanting to make an impact in your community, this podcast is for you. We cover all facets of fundraising, and our main objective is to give you ideas and inspiration to help you raise more money. Join us as we grow, learn, and make an impact together. Hey, fundraiser. Welcome back. Come on in. I am Mary, and today's episode is a masterclass on donor meetings. Well, specifically the first 5 minutes, because the first 5 minutes decide whether this meeting becomes a real major gift conversation that actually moves the relationship toward that major gift, or you get friend zoned and you're like in the polite small talk and like a let's stay in touch mode. And I want to normalize something. Most donor meetings don't go badly. They go fine. They're pleasant, they're cordial, they're professional. But a lot of times fundraisers walk out thinking, why didn't we move anything forward? Or I still really don't know what they care about. Or I haven't really talked about next steps with them. These are the exact things that we are going to fix today. So in this episode, I have a lengthy list of things I want to get through. So here it is. I want to talk to you about what the first 5 minutes of your donor meetings actually do. I want to give you 3 openings that create nice but stuck meetings. I want to give you a first 5-minute framework so that you can understand it and repeat it and actually move your donor forward. I want to talk to you about how to pivot out of small talk without being awkward. I also wrote down 8 common donor meeting scenarios and what to do in each of those, how to run the rest of the meeting after your first 5 minutes, and then just like a weekly practice challenge that is going to make this skill stick. So yes, this is a little longer episode than I normally do, so save it, come back to it, and steal the parts you need. Let's go. Okay, first, the first 5 minutes do 4 things. 1, it sets the tone. Is this going to feel human and relational, or is it going to be stiff and transactional? The second thing it does is creates depth. Like, are we going to stay on the surface, or are we actually going to talk about meaning, value, and motivations? It's also going to help you understand direction. Are we building toward the next step, or are we just enjoying a conversation? And fourth, this is about leadership, fundraiser, your leadership. And this is the part that people miss. Oftentimes, the donor is kind of unconsciously asking themselves, is this fundraiser leading the conversation, or am I leading it? And donors often like leadership, not pressure, but leadership. And leadership sounds like clear framing, respectful permission, not wandering on 18 different subjects and talking in circles, and making next steps very easy. When you lead the first 5 minutes of your donor meeting well, the rest of the meeting is much easier and it is on track. When you don't, the meeting becomes like a fog bank, and fog banks don't close major gifts. So I want to give you 3 default openings that create stuck meetings. And I don't want you to be friend zoned, fundraiser. I don't want you to have these nice but stuck meetings. So here are 3 things that I want you to avoid. First and foremost, the update dump. You start with the organizational updates. This is how fundraisers try to prove their value. Like, oh my gosh, look at all the cool things we're doing. We're doing this and this and this and this and this. But what happens is it makes the donor passive. They just kind of listen instead of participate. And frankly, they glaze over. Major gift conversations require participation. I mean, even true, beautiful cultivation, you can't cultivate by talking all the time. So don't start the meeting with like all of the organizational things. Second, avoid like an agenda read. So when you open a meeting like today, I want to cover 3 things. I mean, that's not always wrong, but it's just too stiff, too early. And it signals like I have a script to get through instead of this is a conversation that we are building together. The third thing you want to avoid is the small talk spiral. Small talk is fine. I like small talk. I'm not a monster. But if you let it run the meeting, you end up with a lot of warmth, but no movement forward. A great rapport with the donor, and that feels good, but no direction. And then the donor likes you, but there's really no next step. So here's the rule. Small talk is the bridge, not the destination. So I want you to try to avoid those three things. I want to share a quick story. I went on a donor visit with somebody who I was managing. This is years ago. And we sat down in Seattle in someone's beautiful home overlooking the Puget Sound. And Marcia, who I was with, sat down and literally talked for 90% of the meeting. The donor was glazed over. I was glazed over. Like Marcia just kept saying, we're doing this and we're doing this and we're doing this. And she never asked a question. She never engaged the prospect. And she actually asked for a gift in that meeting, which oh gosh, I'm cringing just thinking about. Of course we got turned down. I think she asked for maybe a 10 or a 25,000. I can't remember. But the donor was like, yeah, no, I'm good. No, thanks. But Marcia walked out and she was like, don't you think that meeting went really well? Like I got to tell her all these things that we're doing. And I said, Marcia, no, I don't think it went well. And Marcia was shocked. She was like, wait, it was so good. And I'm like, oy. So make sure you don't do the invitate or the organizational dump. Make sure that you engage people. Make sure that you don't spiral into small talk and set the tone in the first 5 minutes. So I want to teach you a simple, repeatable framework for those first 5 minutes. So you want to connect with the donor. You want to frame what the meeting's about. You want to have some depth to your discussion. Let's not be surfacey. And then you want to bridge to next steps. So let's kind of break those 4 things down. So step 1, you need to connect. You need to spend 2 to 3 minutes being warm, being human, but being brief. So some things you might say are, thank you so much for taking time to meet with me today, or I really appreciate you making some space and time for the organization today. Thank you. If you have a relevant personal note, then use it, but don't treat this like a 12-minute warm up. I mean, you could say, I know you went on vacation last month. How did that go? Or, I know you recently had this milestone. How did that go? Just kind of connect, but 2 to 3 minutes. Then you just want to spend 20 seconds framing the meeting. This is really the sentence that changes everything. It changes from a nice meeting to a meeting that actually moves things toward a gift. So I usually like to say something like, Tim, I'd love to hear what's been most meaningful for you lately. Then I'd love to share a couple updates, and then we can maybe decide next steps together. How does that sound? That kind of frame does 3 things. 1, it's donor-centered because you are saying you want to hear from them, you want to create space for dialogue, and then you are honoring them by saying there's going to be next steps. We're going to decide them together. The second thing is that it gives you permission to share later. They know they don't want to talk the whole meeting because you have things to say. And third, it sets an expectation that we're going to decide next steps as part of this meeting. So that's how you want to frame it. It takes, 20 seconds or less. And most people are like, great, sounds great. Then you want to get into some depth. And this fundraiser, this could take 30 minutes. As long as you are understanding, you're having an exchange, you're both discussing things, you're learning about the prospect, take as much time as you need for this. And so I want to give you kind of a handful of questions that you can, pick and choose from. But essentially what you're trying to do is understand their values, understand where they get strength, understand the kind of change they want to make in the world. Okay, so here's a couple questions. These are some of my favorites, not all of them, but some of them. What originally pulled you toward this work? That's a great question to understand their history. Another good one is, what kind of impact do you most want your giving to have? Like, what kind of change do you want to make in the world? It's a huge question. It's a good question, and it allows you to go deep. Another question I love is, what matters most to you when you support an organization? This is going to tell you so many things, fundraiser. It's going to tell you, like, are they kind of into recognition? Are they into, really into the work? Are they into a very particular part of the work? This is a game changer question. Another one is, what are you most curious about right now? This tells you where their mind is. Is it based in, what's happening in the world? Do they talk about your organization? Do they talk about, they're having trouble with their kids? Like, what they tell you is going to be pretty deep. And then the last one I want to give you is, what feels most important for you to accomplish this year? Huge question, like huge. But then you want to pause and you want to let them answer, and you want to have a really amazing exchange with them about their answer. And this just builds trust, fundraiser. It just creates that stickiness. And then you want to bridge. You want to decide next steps. So you can reflect what you heard and then connect it to what you're then going to talk about. So you could say something like, it sounds like what matters most to you is X. Can I share some things that directly connect to that? And of course, they're going to say yes. And this is when you get to bridge their values and what you heard to your programming and your awesome organization. And this is frankly how you avoid random updates and actually create relevance. You're listening to what the donor cares most about, and you're directly relating it back to your programming and your organization. It's the way. Okay, so that is how you manage your first 5 minutes. You connect, right? You have a couple minutes of just personal discussion. You then take 20 seconds to frame the meeting. You spend time going deep into their values, what they want to see in the world, how their life is going. And then you bridge it to what your organization is doing. Now, I also want to give you like a menu of phrases that you can use. I mean, not full scripts, but phrases that keep you grounded. So here are some ways that you can really help frame the meeting. And I'm just going to give you 3 examples. One is, I want to make this conversation useful for you. Can I ask you a couple questions first? Of course, they're going to say yes. My hope is that we leave today with a clear next step that feels good for you. Okay, of course, they're going to be like, yeah, sounds good. And then lastly, you could say something like, I'd love to hear what's meaningful for you lately. Then I'll share a couple updates and we'll decide next steps together. Now, I know that's the second time I've said this in this podcast, but it's just so good. It was worth repeating. Okay, here are a couple phrases that you can use when you're really trying to get deep with this prospect. I mean, you could say, what motivated you to take time out of your busy day to meet with me today and talk about the organization? Love it. What are you hoping to accomplish with your philanthropy this year? What are you most proud of lately? Or when you think about the impact you want to make in the world, what are the 3 things that matter most to you? I mean, those are going to get you into deep territory, fundraiser. Okay, then of course you're going to go into the bridge. You could say something like, I love what you just said. Can I connect that to something that we're seeing right now? And of course they're going to say yes. And you do that. Or would it be helpful if I shared the most urgent place we're focusing that matches what you actually care about? Of course they're going to say yes. And then, or you could just say, based on what you said, I think you're really going to care about something that we've got going on right now. And then you launch into what you've got going on right now. But again, fundraiser, when you're bridging, I mean, yes, we've talked about the bridge, but then you're going to spend a couple minutes talking about the organization. It's very important that you are engaging the donor or the prospect. if you talk more than 5 minutes straight, just know that people glaze over. They really do. And I know you might be the most riveting orator in the world, but it's people just don't have a lot of patience these days. And, we all have the attention span of a, I don't know, gnat. So just make sure that you don't go on this long diatribe. Like, don't be Marsha. Remember her? Okay. Sorry, I forgot one thing. The next step. So you want to do this early, and you want to make this, very soft, very casual. You could say something like, hey, before we wrap, I want to decide next steps with you just so we're both on the same page. Would that be okay? Of course they're going to say yes. Or you could say, oh, before we wrap this meeting, I'd like to suggest a couple next steps, and you can tell me what feels right to you. Like, this is leadership without pressure. Okay, one of the big things that fundraisers struggle with is getting stuck in the small talk. So if you notice that you're stuck, you can use this kind of pivot. Like, oh, I love hearing about this. Could I shift us for just a second? I'd love to understand what feels most important to you about your giving right now. And then pause. And if they answer vaguely, like, kind of do a little probing. I mean, don't be weird about it, but you could go a layer deeper. Like, tell me more about this. Like, that one sentence is so gentle and so powerful. So if you need to pivot out of the small talk fundraiser, do it, because I've been that person. I mean, when I was like a little baby fundraiser and I was stuck, and I'd get friend zoned, and then I would leave the meeting, think like, did I even accomplish anything in this meeting? Did I move this person toward a gift? No, I did not. Like, it doesn't feel great. Hey, fundraiser, before you sign up for another fundraising conference where you might leave with a good tote bag but zero strategy to raise more money, let me invite you to Major Gift Momentum. This is my private coaching group where you'll get weekly coaching calls with me, access to my full Major Gift curriculum, and a community that's actually moving the needle. Major Gift Momentum isn't based in theory, it's based in action. Members are closing 5- and 6-figure gifts within 3 months of joining. Heather just closed a $245,000 gift. Jacelyn just closed a $212,000 campaign gift. And Georgette just got a $500,000 commitment. All within 3 months of joining Momentum. Each of these Momentum members didn't think the donor would give that much, but once I taught them my method, they are raising money at a whole new level. So would you like in, fundraiser? If you do, go to heyfundraiser.com/momentum and let's get started. Next, I want to talk to you a little bit about common donor meeting scenarios. And this took literally 25 years to learn. So scenario 1 is that the donor talks the whole time. That's great in some regards because they're opening up, they feel comfortable. Like, these are all good signs. However, you need to make sure it's an exchange, and you need to do all the things, right? You need to connect, you need to bridge, you need to ask questions that are deep, like all the things. So you could say something like, I'm so glad you're sharing all this. Can I just pause you for a second so I can make sure I'm tracking on what matters most? And then I want you to summarize. Okay, so what I'm hearing is, and fill in the blank here. And then bridge, like pivot if you can. Can I share something that connects directly to that? That's going to get the donor to be like, oh, okay. Like, I need to stop talking and we need to get to work. Okay, scenario 2 is that the donor is quiet or guarded. And this can happen a lot, especially in like the first or second meeting. So you could say, would it be helpful if I shared 2 quick updates and then you can tell me what resonates most with you? So what that does is that gives them a little bit of control. And when they have a little bit of control, they feel better. They might open up a little bit more. You will get donors that are quiet and guarded. Like, it's just part of the game. But once you know how to open them up a little bit, you are going to have a skill that's going to help you the rest of your fundraising career. Okay, scenario 3 is the donor wants immediate details. Like, let's talk about overhead, let's talk about budget. So at that point, I just say, okay, the great question. Here's the quick answer. And then I answer it. But then I say something like, in zooming out, what kind of impact feels most important to you as you think about your giving? So again, I'm trying to acknowledge that they had a good question. I'm going to quickly answer their budget or their overhead question, but then I'm going to try to get it back to them telling me what kind of impact that they want to have. I mean, you could insert any of the questions I talked about earlier. Okay, scenario 4 is that the donor is super friendly, but very vague. Like they say things like, I just love what you do. I love everything. Well, in that regard, you can say, I so appreciate that. Can I share like 3 of our most recent initiatives and you can tell me what's most meaningful to you? Of course, they're going to say yes. Or you could say, based on all the things we've talked about, one specific area that I think might be interesting to you is this. And you're at that point, fundraiser, you're just thinking about them, thinking about all the things that you've learned, and then you're relating it back to a program. Okay, scenario 5, when you're meeting with a couple and then one person dominates. This happens a lot, fundraiser. So after the first person answers, and you kind of are getting it, like, okay, this other spouse or partner, is just kind of taking a back seat and isn't, the other one's just dominating. What I like to do is I thank the person for what they just said. Like, I totally understand that. And then I turn and gently say to the other spouse, I'd love to hear your perspective too. Like, what stands out to you, or, whatever the question might be. That helps level the playing field for the staff that might not be as extroverted as the other partner. Okay, scenario 6, the donor is all business. There's no feelings. I don't know that this is always a bad thing. I would urge you to meet them there. Would it be helpful if I shared 3 outcomes we're focusing on this year, and you can tell me what's most compelling? And they'll say, yeah, tell me. And so you can tell them, and then they're going to answer. And then I would ask them, like, what would you want to see to feel confident leaning into this particular program that is interesting to you? If they're all business, meet them where they are, fundraiser, and you can be all business. That's okay. In fact, those are the people that you usually close pretty quick gifts with because they just want to get it done, and that is okay. Okay, the next scenario is that the donor kind of brings up giving immediately. Well, in that case, I would say, great, don't waste it, but I don't want you to rush either. I think you can say, oh, thank you. But, before we talk numbers, can I ask, what kind of outcomes matter most to you? I just want to make sure we're aligned. So when they bring up giving immediately, you can always say, and I've used this exact line many, many times, like, I would like to talk to you about a gift at some point. It's not going to be today. It might not be tomorrow. But when I understand what you care about most, and I can match the perfect program and project to what you care about, I would love to come back to you and talk about a gift. And then they'll respond to that. They might say, why wait? Like, talk to me about what programs you have. Well, great. Then fundraiser, I would get into it. But if they say, okay, that sounds good, then you've actually set a really good tone for that relationship. Okay, last scenario is virtual meetings. Virtual meetings can sometimes feel awkward. And we're getting better about virtual meetings, right? Like, we all made it through the pandemic and we lived on Zoom and Teams. So what I do is I name it and frame it. So I say something like, I know Zoom meetings can feel a little businessy, but it doesn't have to be that way. And I'd kind of love to start by hearing, what's feeling meaningful for you right now, and then proceed with the same framework. So now that we've really talked about the first few minutes, and the first few minutes really are about defining the meeting, setting a really good tone, making sure there's structure, and frankly, not getting off track. So what do you do with the rest of the time? So if your first 5 minutes are strong, the rest of the meeting is so much simpler. I mean, you can do things like confirm values, like repeat back what you heard. You can share stories. You can ask, like, how does that land? You can talk through concerns and curiosity. And then you're going to propose a next step. I mean, your goal is not to cover everything. Fundraiser, if you do everything in that first meeting, like Marcia did, what is there to follow up with? Your goal is to move the relationship forward one step at a time. So here are the big takeaways, fundraiser. The first 5 minutes, these are your leadership moments. Connect, frame, build depth, and then bridge. If you want language for these transitions and like next step conversations, my book, What to Say, is linked in the show notes. Now, if you want coaching and a system that you can apply to real donors every single week, you'll want to consider my Major Gift Momentum program. All right, fundraiser, go lead your next donor meeting like a pro. Hey fundraiser, thanks so much for being here today. Did you know that we create a special page for each episode that contains helpful links, episode highlights, standout quotes, and freebies? Check it out in today's podcast description. If you loved what you heard today, would you kindly give us a rating and review? It really helps other fundraising professionals find our Hey Fundraiser community. I'm Mary Petersen, and thank you for listening.